Okay, it's 11. Let's do this. Let's kick this thing off. So hi, everybody. Welcome to a session called Your Domain Has Expired, Stories Behind Domains We've Let Lapse. I'm Matt Decuir, and this is Minnebar 2020. So hi, everybody. If you don't already know me, I see a lot of friends in the chat, so hopefully some of you already do. But I'm a software engineer, and I own 16 domains. I looked this up last night. 8 of which are for personal use, and 8 of which are for professional use. Frozenpizza.club is my favorite domain that I own. LessToLove.co that might have been the very first one that I bought that wasn't just like a personal website that I had an idea for, and that has long since expired. That was supposed to be a dating site for people who have lost weight. Never turned into anything. And then lastly, I also have another domain, breakthebubble.com, and that's the one that has the best story. So if there's time, I might get to sharing that story at some point, but I also wrote a blog post that I can link to later if people want to read it. So how this is going to work, this is very heavy on audience participation, where you can share your stories either via the chat or with video. And also, just lastly, this is a safe space, and it's a judgment-free zone. So if you haven't already read the code of conduct on the Ministar website, it's very short. And it basically just says treat people with respect, and this is a harassment-free space. Okay, so for warm up, for everybody in the chat here, we're just gonna get your feet wet. And in lieu of like in-person warm up and standing up and shouting and whatever the heck you do at in-person events these days. Here's the question: if you want to introduce yourself really fast, say your name and how many domains do you own? I know that like there have been times where I had far more than 16 domains. And it was kind of like a KonMari, like a Marie Kondo, like, does this domain bring you joy sort of thing, where I did a big purge. So for those couple of you in the chat, feel free to mention how many domains you own. I'm gonna pop mine in. 8 for personal use and 8 for work. And I'm sure everybody's like going to their registrars and looking up how many you actually own. So that's totally okay. Josh, the Crowdcast or the StreamYard streaming guy, says he owns 3. He put that in the other chat, not this one. Okay, I'm gonna drop the StreamYard link here in. Eric, just a mere 19. I love it. That's so great. Here's the StreamYard. Oh, is Tim already in here? Okay. All right. So this is great. I feel like we're getting a broad range of anywhere from like 2 all the way up to 20 something. 22 right now, James, is pretty good. Eric, 11, 25, Brandon. That's solid considering I know you used to own more. All right, Nick, one domain. Wow, that's impressive. Another Nick, 2. Okay, I think Tim's already up here. So let me go from, this is our warm up. Here's our main event. Let me go to the next slide. So the main event is, share your domain story. And this could be as simple as, I bought this domain and this was the idea and I let it lapse and I deeply regret it. Or it could be, I bought this domain and it's super cool and yada, 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 yada. And this is what it's going to be in the future when I eventually get around to doing it. Okay, I think we have Tim already here on the chat, on the video. Feel free to share your story.
I come up with domain names with corresponding ideas that go along with them at way too great a rate. And the first year is $9 and the second year is $30. And my challenge is that I end up with about 20 or 30 domains coming back in at $30 with ideas that I may or may not be get around to. And it's kind of expensive. So I let some lapse and wish that I hadn't. I hang on to some and wonder if I should. And that's kind of my challenge.
Yep. Do you have a specific one, just like one that's the most notable that you want to share? I think that we all sort of share that sentiment.
The one that's coming around this week is one called Fedora City. About 15 years ago, I turned into the high quality hat guy on eBay, and I sell probably 200 or 300 hats a year. I hope to crank it up sometime and get it into thousands of hats. The hats that I get are ones that are inherited from Grandpa's closet when he dies, basically, is where they come from. And they're 1950s fedoras like Humphrey Bogart wears. And I buy them for $50 and sell them for 300 or 400, depending on what the hat is. I do a good job with it as Timothy's Closet on eBay and on Poshmark and on Instagram and places like that. I think I've got hats.com or hats.guru, and fedoracity.com is one that I've got that, do you hang on to that or not? Because I'm already doing business under another name, but Fedora City is very cool, and I could plug that in and turn that into a thing down the road. I've talked to a couple.
That's great, Tim. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off because we don't have a ton of time, and I want to make sure the other folks who are here are going to share. I should have mentioned that before, but I'm going to give people about a minute or so each to, like, max to share their most compelling story or stories. But Tim, your hat websites sound amazing, and I'm going to go visit fedoracity.com. Brandon, do you want to go next? I know you have a lot of domains, but you kind of got to, like, limit it to the most compelling and your favorite ones.
Oh yeah. Well, so for one thing, hi everybody, I'm Brandon. So I've got my Gandhi.net like registrar page open right now. And I think the one that I'm most dismayed about my inability to use effectively is visitbrandon.today. So this is one that I got about, let's see, probably like mid-February, when I was like staring down my 25th birthday, and I was like, you know what? It would be super cool to go to every place in the continental United States, maybe Canada too, named Brandon, because that's my name. I was like, I don't know what better way to celebrate my 25th birthday than to visit a bunch of places. Oh, hey, air conditioner, named Brandon. And then, a pandemic happened, and I was like, you know what? I guess I'm not gonna visit Brandon.today. I'm just gonna, hang out at home. So that's my most entertaining purchased but not yet used domain story. It's not quite a lapsed domain, but it's very similar in a lot of ways. So
nice. What about here's one that is one of your expired domains that I have a very strong affinity for. Overcommitters.club. Do you want to share that one?
Yeah, well, so we bought Overcommitters Club, and then as you might have imagined, as overcommitters, we did not have time to make effective use of it. But it was a really cool idea, and I think it was you, me, and Eve Poschel, I think, were basically like, well, what if we set aside some time that we just booked, like every month, and we're like, hey, we're gonna take that hour and we'll give it back to ourselves as overcommitters, people who sign up for more than we can handle. Yep. But we bit off more than we could chew and just never made it happen. And then I think it expired like February of this year, March of this year, probably around the same time as I bought visitbrandon.today, not gonna lie. But it's just one of those things where you bit off more than you can chew.
Yep, that's great. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I know I buffaloed you into coming on and sharing your domain story, so thank you, Brandon. Feel free to pop out if you want to bail. Eric, I feel like you have two stories, so feel free to share both of them. I'll give you like a minute or two.
I'll start with the sad one and then move to the hopeful one if we've got time. Hopefully you can hear me all right. The sad one, there is one I sold. This one I just let lapse because, then life got better on the internet. PicoPay.com, PicoPay.com, with the slogan, when you care enough to send a tiny bit. And it was kind of in that, like, the buzz and talk about micropayments, but no one was actually doing them. And I had this grand idea, but I'm not a coder, so I had no idea how to do it. But step one, get an idea. Step two, buy the domain. And then step three, let it sit for a while, right? And the idea was that, like, kind of a billing in arrears thing where you'd attach your website to it and accrue 2 or 3 cents per page. And then at some point this would aggregate in a big database and then bill someone $2.50 at the end of the month or something they would pay, and then you take your cut and then you distribute to the sites. It was going to be great. Didn't happen. And pico-pay.com was owned by somebody, I think, in New Zealand. I'm like, well, if I can't have the one with the dash, then there's no point, right?
Yeah.
And so I just let it lapse. And now some domain holder owns it and would sell it back to me for thousands of dollars. But then I'd just be back to not having, have the site with the idea, but no way to do it. But that we would have been like the micropayment czar of the entire planet. I'm sure it would have worked circa 2003. So
yeah, that was great. That would have been great timing. I mean, you would have been crushing it at this point had it worked out.
Yep, but it didn't. So since Scott popped in, we'll because I'm eager to hear other stories. So I'll let other folks join in and drop out. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Scott, welcome. Hello. You want to share your story?
Yeah, I sure do. So, yeah, this I got this domain name, and I've let it lapse a couple of years ago, finally. But I got it in like '98, and etalk.org, and I thought I fell off my seat when I found I could get etalk, and it was a .org. So I made a little presentation. I was pitching this to some of my friends, and at the presentation, I think is really interesting. So the presentation here is from March 2000. And I was starting a new job, and I went through did a little research on them, .com, .org, .net. Those are pretty much all we had back then. And so I said, what's available? And I said, well, Amazon.com, that worked, but guess what? Ganges, Nile, Yangtze, Mississippi, Wabash, all of the ComNet orgs were taken at that time. So then I said, hey, eBay, that's kind of snappy. Well, guess what? A-Bay, B-Bay, C-Bay, X-Bay, Y-Bay, all the letter bays were taken in all of the .com. Some of the .nets were available. Backflip, which was a website at the time, which I used, was kind of neat. But Cartwheel, Jump Up, Jump Back, Springboard, all the .com, .net, .orgs were taken. Yahoo, crazy name. But Yippee, Wowie, Zorba, Holy Cow, Stupendous, all the .com, .net, .orgs were taken. And About.com was something I actually tried to be a moderator on, but that, of course, Ask, Answers, great source, Ask Me, I know. And I just thought the e-names were cool, but of course, and that's when I got the etalk.org. They were asking at the time, I have a little list of what they were asking there, $100,000 for eanswer.com, $185,000 for eTimes. So, and for e-conferencing, they were asking $200,000. So I thought that was interesting. That was the state as it was in March of 2000.
Wow, that's amazing, Scott. I love that you printed out slides to share the stories. It's so great.
Well, I had to scramble through my mess here to find them because I don't know where the digital files are 20 years later.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
I know I see a lot of other people in the chat here dropping how many domains they own and some impressively low numbers. If you want to come on and share your share one or a couple of the domains that you're most proud of or deeply regret letting lapse, you're more than welcome to join the StreamYard here, the video. You don't have to share via video, which is totally fine. If you want to drop it in the chat, feel free to just drop the domain name and the sort of the idea behind it. For example, I'm going to drop mine. My first domain was lesstolove.co. And legit, I thought that it was I was going to make a dating site for people who have lost weight. And I did a bunch of research on it. Oh, let me fix that. I did a bunch of research on it, and the outcome was really that people didn't want to limit their dating pool that much. So I'm going to drop that in the chat for people who lost weight. If you want to drop some of those URLs and the idea behind them in the chat, you're more than welcome. Martin, I feel like I'm not sure if Whereby is a website that you own, but you should share what you got. Hey,
no,
Marty.
Whereby isn't mine. That's actually just another it's like a Zoom competitor, but it's a kind of an interesting one in that you basically you start an account and then you get a whereby.com address, which is like whereby.com/one thing. It's like your slug, and then it links directly to a chat with you. So it's kind of a neat little thing. I've seen a few people use it in this time. But yeah, I mean, I've had so many domains. This is a fun, this is a fun thing for me. But the one that I really truly regret not building, because I just think it's such a good idea. And anyone's feel free to steal this idea, because I totally let it lapse and it's gone from my my desired. I don't know. I mean, I still want to make it, but it's never going to happen. Was festshirts.com. And so the idea there was that every festival, every conference that you go to makes a T-shirt, right? And a lot of them, they really limit the number they make because they don't want to end up with extras, right? So this idea was that you'd have a warehouse, and after every festival was done, if they wanted to sell you their shirts for cheap, you would, you'd buy them up, and then it was also going to be like basically like the IMDb for festival T-shirts, right? So like every festival, you just take a photo of the shirt or whatever, and you go to the site and you could say, yeah, I got that one, or like, you just upload your photo of it or whatever. Because I think a lot of these shirts are totally like one-offs, right? I mean, somebody paid their brother $50 to make a T-shirt design, and then they printed 500 of them, and then that's it. There's never gonna be more of those shirts. And a lot of them were really, there's some shirts that I would be like, oh man, I really want that shirt. Where'd you get that? Oh, that's from XYZ festival from 10 years ago. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm never going to get that shirt. And so, I mean, there's basically conferences in every discipline have these shirts, and they just are just one-offs. They exist like ephemerally. And so I think like basically a database that like, can see all these awesome shirts, and B, like a place to like resell them. That's how you monetize. Anyway, that was my brilliant idea from like, I don't know, it was probably 2000. It was like 2004 or something. I registered that.
That's amazing. I feel like, I mean, I know like exactly what you're talking about. Like if you go to Goodwill or Savers or something, like you see all these like point in time moment like shirts, whether it's a conference or like I don't know, like a concert or something else.
Yeah, music festivals have them for sure. Like, so for me, I'm a juggler and a unicycler, and there are juggling festivals and unicycling festivals all around the world, probably every weekend, and a lot of them make shirts. So I mean, just the like / juggling like on the domain or whatever would have been, thousands of shirts potentially. I actually went to a friend's house who is a unicycling, like she's like, there's a big unicycling scene locally. Anyway, she herself owned, I think, 200 unicycling festival shirts or something like that. I mean, it was a lot.
Wow.
And so we took some digital photos. I think I archived like, somewhere 200 photos of her T-shirt collection for this project that I never did anything with.
That is amazing. I love it.
Yep.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your story, Marty. This is great. I'm seeing some other good ones in the chat, and there's a lot of people who are interested in that website. What was the URL that do you still own the domain, and what was the URL?
Of mine? I do not own the domain anymore, and it was festshirts.com.
Festshirts.com.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure that there's probably like a million shirts or a million domains. And actually, the other thing I wanted to say is that I think this era of like hoarding domains is nearing its end, because now you can buy. So there's so many TLDs now. Like, if I was going to do that project now, I'd probably look and see maybe .shirt is available, or something like that. Like, or .club. It could be t-shirt.club, or I don't know. I mean, there's just so many different ones.
Yep.
.community, shirt.community.
Yep, I love it. That's great. Okay, I see a lot of people in the chat that are like really excited about some of these ideas. Thank you for sharing, Marty. This is great. Okay, hold on a sec. I'm going to read through some of these conversations. Okay, James brings up some really good points that like stories about buying and selling domains. Like, I'd love to hear some of those. I personally, and I'll drop the link to this blog post in the chat, but I bought a domain one time for a $60 box of chocolates, which was a wild story that I didn't expect to actually come true and happen. And at that point, like once the guy was like, yeah, I'll do it for a box of fancy chocolates for my wife. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And I sent him a box of chocolates as a flyer, just hoping that it actually worked out, and it did. And so here we are. James said he sold quite a few domains. That's awesome. Adrian sold awayteams.com for $200. Dang, nice. That's solid. I feel like when you make a speculative $12 purchase, you never know if it's gonna turn out. as like a great idea that turns into some real money, or if it just goes away because you didn't ever do anything with it. Let's see what else. Riley has techcommunity.rocks, and he wants it to be a community curated list of groups and meetups, but he wanted like a very specific particular solution. Riley, I want to know if you actually built that out. That sounds like it would be really helpful. Let's see. James has some blogging related ones. Oh, and I should also say, if you have a story but you don't want to disclose the domain name or whatever, that's totally fine. The thing behind it is the part that's like, the story is the part that's compelling. I'm gonna pull up my my story about buying breakthebubble.com because that was a good one. And again, if you want to join and share your video live, share your story live, that would be wonderful. The StreamYard link is in the chat, but if not, feel free to share it in the chat, like just with text. That's okay too. The big idea behind all of this was that this was going to be done live in person at Minibar, so we're adapting to the virtual world that we're living in right now. We bought our domain for a box of chocolates. Cool. Dropping that link in here. Here's the story. I know it's hard for me because I have too many windows open already, but I know that Gary Leatherman has a really sad domain story that I haven't heard yet. So I really want him to share his story if we can get the story up here somewhere. Brandon, you got events.pizza. Yeah, that's probably like one of my favorite domains as well. I hope that becomes the Eventbrite competitor that we want it to become in the future. Blogistry.com. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Martin. Eric, you've got a Java conference shirt. Nice, very nice. All right. I'm trying to think, or I'm going to scroll up in the chat to see if I missed anything, but let's see. Mayur, do you have a story? Do you have a domain that you want to share? Let's see. Got questions? Oops, no questions. We're almost at time here. We're at 11:22, so you got a couple more minutes if anybody has anything that they want to share. If not, thanks for coming and participating in the first ever Your Domain Has Expired Minibar session. Hopefully this will happen in person maybe sometime in the future if it ends up having been a success. If not, it's totally okay as well. Okay, Alex in the comments says got the domain companyman.us, and it was going to be their professional work blog. He thought it would be good if it was a public forum where other company people would share their experience of what earned them that title. I don't even know what being a company person entails or what that means, so I'd be curious to hear you elaborate on that one, Alex. Brandon, opesolutions.com, that's a good one. I like it. I'm trying to remember. I bought momasin.com a long time ago and then let it lapse, and now it's like a weird Swiss website. Ope software, not Ope Solutions. That's a huge, important distinction. I feel like I've heard of other friends who have really good domains, but I don't want to share them without, checking with their permission first. But my friend Justin said that he got 2 domain expiration emails just the other day. I owned abc.pizza before I owned frozenpizza.club. And when I said abc.pizza, people were like always be chewing pizza. The idea was that it was going to be like a sort of encyclopedia of pizzas with reviews and whatnot. And we eventually landed on frozenpizza.club, which I like it because it's so short. Okay, we're at 11:24. If you're looking for places to reach me on the internet, I'm Experimat on Twitter, and I have, of course, experimat.com. I also own mattdecuir.com, which redirects to experimat.com, or maybe the other way around. I own 16 domains, really like 8, which I think is a pretty respectable number. It's not too many, it's not too few. And hopefully this conversation will continue to go on in the future. I don't know if it'll be, if we can start a hashtag on Twitter or if this is just a casual thing that people will discuss for years because it was the best thing that came out of 2020. But thank you all for coming. And I hope that you were entertained, and I appreciate everybody sharing stories. we can wrap it here, I guess, 1 minute early. And if you want to keep chatting, keep throwing your stories in the chat and what have you. This has been really fun. I've been entertained personally. With that, I guess we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you. Hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their minibar experience and wonderful Tuesday.